Hey everyone, let's talk about something massive that happened recently in Beijing, one of the largest military parades in history. I mean, this thing was huge, with tens of thousands of troops cutting edge weapons, and China showing off its full land, sea, air, and nuclear capabilities for the first time in public. It was a spectacle that grabbed the world's attention, and honestly, it put everyone on notice. But let's clear up one thing right away. This wasn't about China gearing up to start a war or attack anyone. No way. There's a much deeper story behind this parade, and it's all about strategy, history, and a message to the world, especially the United States. Some folks in Western media tried to spin this as China flexing its muscles to threaten the US or signal an invasion of Taiwan, but that's just not the reality. The truth is, this parade was a calculated move by Chinese leaders who are always thinking several steps ahead. It was a loud and clear signal to the US to stop escalating tensions with China. And here's the wild part. It seems like the US is actually listening. Just last week, a leaked draft of the US new national defense strategy showed a shocking shift. The Pentagon is moving away from focusing on countering big players like China and Russia and instead prioritizing domestic and regional missions. That's a complete 180 from the pivot to Asia strategy that kicked off under Obama over a decade ago. For years, we've been told by Western media that China is the biggest threat to the world's future. But let's look at the facts. China is the top trading partner for over 120 countries, outpacing the US in securing trade deals, especially during Trump's trade war chaos. They're positioning themselves as a beacon of stability in a world that feels increasingly unsteady. And here's the kicker: the Pentagon itself has admitted through numerous reports that the US couldn't win a conventional war against China. That's a bold statement, I know, but it's not just based on the impressive display we saw in Beijing. It's backed by hard evidence from the US military's own assessments. So let's dive into what this parade really means, why the US is pulling back from Asia, and why China's military is coming out on top in this global chess game. The first thing we need to understand is the historical context of this parade, because Western media completely missed the mark on this. They love to flash images of world leaders walking together in Beijing and spin it as some grand conspiracy to take down the West. But that's not what this was about. The parade was officially commemorating the 80th anniversary of China's victory in the war against Japanese aggression during World War II, a conflict where China played a massive role in defeating fascism. This isn't just a footnote in history. China paid an unimaginable price, losing tens of millions of lives fighting Imperial Japan. The war in China started in 1937, 4 years before the US even joined the fight in 1941, and most of the battles happened on Chinese soil. For the Chinese, this isn't ancient history, it's personal. Many have grandparents who fought or died in that war, and the memory is still raw. But in the West, China's role is often ignored or downplayed, partly because Japan became a key US ally during the Cold War. This rewriting of history has even crept into high-level political discourse. Take, for example, a recent comment by a top European official who seemed shocked that anyone would suggest Russia and China played major roles in winning World War II. She claimed people don't remember history anymore, which is ironic because she overlooked the fact that the Soviet Union, not the US or Britain, did the heavy lifting in defeating Nazi Germany, accounting for 75 to 80% of the Nazis' military losses. This kind of historical amnesia fits neatly into the West's current anti-Russia and anti-China narratives, but it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And it's not just Europe. In the US, former President Trump took a swing at China, tweeting that President Xi should acknowledge the massive support and blood the US gave to help China defeat Japan. He even threw in a jab about Xi conspiring with Putin and Kim Jong-un against America. As a US citizen, I'm proud of my country's role in World War II, but it's frustrating to see history twisted for political points. China lost 20 to 35 million people in that war, compared to the US 400,000 soldiers. The Soviet Union sacrificed around 27 million lives. The numbers don't lie, and they expose the political spin for what it is. This parade wasn't just about history, though. It was a strategic display of power meant to deter aggression. Western media painted it as a threat aimed at the US, but they're missing the bigger picture. China's military buildup is a direct response to US actions, like sailing warships through the Taiwan Strait and pushing a policy of containment. China's focus has always been self-defense, rooted in the ancient philosophy of Sun Tzu, who taught that the best way to win is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Ironically, Sun Tzu's Art of War is studied at West Point, but US strategists seem to miss his point about avoiding conflict altogether. This parade was China saying, "Don't even think about it. This is a fight you don't want." And the US knows it. Pentagon war games consistently show the US losing badly in a conflict with China. Missiles run out in days, fleets are sunk, and thousands of lives are lost, all without achieving any real objectives. The US is thousands of miles away, while China would be fighting on its home turf. The parade also showcased China's technological edge, with 80% of the equipment, like hypersonic missiles, advanced drones, and anti-drone systems, being shown publicly for the first time. These aren't just copies of Western tech. China is innovating and leading in areas like unmanned vehicles and electronic warfare. They're also outpacing the US in production, with a manufacturing capacity that dwarfs America's. China accounts for 35% of global production, more than the next 9 countries combined. In a war, they could churn out drones and missiles faster than the US could hope to match. Naval power is another area where China dominates. Their shipbuilding capacity is 232 times greater than the US, producing 8 to 9 ships per month, compared to America's 3 to 4 per year. This gap is why the US is shifting focus back to its own backyard, reviving old imperialist ideas like the Monroe Doctrine and eyeing resources in places like Venezuela and Greenland. Meanwhile, the US is also turning inward, deploying troops in cities like Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., in ways that raise serious questions about American values. China's parade achieved its goal. It showed the world that they're a force to be reckoned with, deterring any thoughts of escalation. While this reduces the risk of war with China, it's clear the US is now focusing its military might closer to home, often at the expense of its neighbors and even its own citizens. The military-industrial complex keeps pushing for conflict, but China's display of strength is a reminder that peace through deterrence might just be the better path. Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive, everyone. Knowledge is power, and understanding the real story behind this parade helps us see through the media noise. Let's keep the conversation going, and I'll see you in the next video.